Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. I gotta share this wild story with you. I'm a 26-year-old university student in Slovakia, so English isn't my first language, but I'll do my best. It all started back in 2018 during our senior year of high school. At my business academy, we had this tradition where each class would contribute 50 euros per student every year into a fund to cover the costs of our senior prom. With 29 of us, we managed to save up around 5,800 euros over 4 years. In our final year, we needed to appoint a parent to manage the account, make payments for stuff like venues and catering, and handle the booze. Unfortunately, Karen Johnson basically nominated herself for the role. The other parents were like, "Yeah, you do you, Karen." This is where things got messy. Karen was the mayor of my small hometown, which was just a short drive from the school. I used to be really tight with her son, Brad, when we were kids, but once we started high school, he became an insufferable, spoiled rich kid. Brand new car, the latest iPhone, lavish vacations, you name it. He made sure everyone knew his family had money and nobody could outshine his wealth. As our prom night approached, we realized our fund was almost depleted. The girls had meticulously planned every detail, budgeting down to the last cent. We were supposed to have around 600 euros left over, but suddenly there was only 50 bucks in the account. At the time, we figured Karen had just overspent a bit and would cover the difference later. We asked her about it, and she said, "I spent it where you told me to. I'll put the rest back." I didn't believe a word, but with prom the next day, we just wanted to enjoy ourselves. The night was a blast. Great food, drinks, and company with our parents and teachers. The next morning, we checked the account and discovered we were 600 euros in debt. What the hell happened? We asked Karen for an explanation. She claimed she gave the photographer 200 euros, plus another 200 as a bonus for his excellent work, then another 200 to get Blu-ray discs instead of regular DVDs or CDs. Her story seemed plausible, so we bought it for a while, but then we called the photographer and he said he only received 200 euros from Karen. Suddenly, it all made sense. She had been pocketing our money bit by bit, an extra 100 here and there. We estimated she had borrowed around 1,200 euros from our fund. We informed our class advisor and parents, and they were furious. We demanded Karen provide receipts to account for the missing money, but her excuses grew more ridiculous as she tried to cover her tracks. Eventually, no one believed her lies anymore. We repeatedly asked her to reimburse us, but she always had an excuse since the fund wasn't official. By the time our graduation ceremony, called maturita in Slovakia, rolled around, we had no money left for a farewell party for our teachers. Some parents volunteered to cook and bake for the occasion. Karen even had the audacity to show up and help herself to the food, despite being asked to leave until she paid her debt. A few days later, I got a Facebook notification from Brad that made my jaw drop. "If everyone chips in 20 euros more, we can cover the costs." This entitled brat was actually asking us for more money. I told him no way and showed up at his birthday party that night. I handed him a bottle of Jack Daniels, since he once mocked that I could never afford it, and said, "We're done. I don't want to be your friend anymore." I couldn't let Karen's theft slide. Her husband eventually covered the costs, but that wasn't enough for me. She had stolen from her own son and his classmates. We knew she was a fraudster, involved in tax evasion, embezzlement, falsifying documents, and even extortion. So we gathered evidence of her stealing from our fund and handed it over to the prosecutor already investigating her for corruption charges. They saw it as a window into her true character, someone who would stoop so low as to steal from a prom fund and her own child. The trial kept getting delayed because Karen knew people in high places. But we applied constant pressure, leaving comments on her Facebook demanding she confess and sending emails detailing her scam. Eventually, the stress became too much, and she started making critical mistakes that jeopardized her other cases. Karen desperately tried to avoid going to trial and having her prom fund theft exposed. Her criminal activities soon caught up with her. I know of at least 3 ongoing corruption investigations against her for abusing her power as a public official. There's even an arrest warrant out for her, though I'm not sure if they've apprehended her yet. Since her last trial for another scam, Karen has had to pawn her house, sell her car, and even Brad's motorcycle to cover legal fees and fines. From what I've heard, she's gone into hiding now. As for Brad, the entitled upbringing didn't prepare him for the real world. He bounced between 8 jobs in 2 years and dropped out of college after just 1 semester. Rumor has it he's dealing pot to get by these days. The person I feel worst for is Karen's husband and Brad's father, Dave. He always seemed like a genuinely nice guy who once stood up for me in elementary school. Karen refused to pay back money she borrowed in Dave's name, forcing him to declare bankruptcy to avoid legal consequences. From what Dave told me years ago, family is the most important thing that makes a man feel proud and like he's part of something. Now I can only imagine how trapped and disillusioned he must feel, still married to Karen after all she's put him through. The next one is an entitled people story. I've lived in my cozy bungalow for over a decade now. It's located in a quiet suburban neighborhood with neat rows of charming homes. My neighbors and I have always gotten along well over the years. We watch each other's homes when someone goes on vacation, help shovel snow off the sidewalks in winter, and exchange home-cooked meals. There's a real sense of community here. That neighborhood vibe shifted after the house next door to me was sold last year. A businessman named Mark and his family moved in. Right from the start, I could tell Mark had little regard for our neighborhood. The first weekend they moved in, there was thumping music blasting at all hours. I let it slide, thinking it was just part of their housewarming party, but the inconsiderate behavior persisted week after week. Mark started doing major renovations on the house. I'm talking jackhammers going at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. He converted his garage into an extra bedroom without proper permits. Large delivery trucks blocked the street several times a day. It was obnoxious how little he cared about disrupting our normally serene block. The last straw came a month ago when I glanced out my kitchen window and noticed construction workers in Mark's backyard. They were building a huge extension that practically went right up against my fence. I watched in disbelief as the skeletal wood frame took shape over the next few days. How could they be erecting such a major addition without any permits? I decided to look up the building codes for our area. Sure enough, projects of that size required approval from the city planning department. There was no way Mark's monster extension met code. I knew I had to speak up. The next morning, I walked next door and rang Mark's doorbell. He answered wearing a smug grin. "Oh, hey neighbor, here to admire the new addition?" he asked. I crossed my arms. "Not exactly. I don't believe you got the proper permits for this." Mark scoffed. "Please, I don't need permission to improve my property. The rules don't apply to me." I stood firm. "Actually, they do. I checked the building codes, and you can't construct something this size without approval. I'm going to report this to the city if you don't halt construction immediately." Mark's smugness morphed into anger. "Listen here, lady. This is my property, and I'll build whatever I damn well please. I have enough money to pay any measly fines, so why don't you just mind your own business instead of sticking your nose where it doesn't belong?" He slammed the door in my face before I could respond. I shook my head in frustration as I walked back to my house. Mark's arrogance was really something else. But I refused to let his intimidation tactics dissuade me. Over the next week, I diligently gathered evidence of Mark's unpermitted build. I took photos documenting the progress daily. I wrote down notes about the noisy construction and work crews at odd hours. I even asked my other neighbors if they had given Mark permission to extend so close to their fence lines. Of course, none had. Finally, with a solid mountain of proof, I filed an official complaint with the city planning office. I outlined Mark's complete disregard for permits and codes. The woman I spoke with was alarmed and said they would send out an inspector right away. It gave me deep satisfaction seeing the inspector's car pull up 2 days later. He surveyed Mark's extension with a furrowed brow, measuring distances and snapping photos. I saw Mark come outside and start arguing with the inspector, who waved around a document and pointed forcefully at the build. The construction crew began dismantling parts of the extension later that day. Ha! I wanted to cry out in victory. Mark's flagrant violation was finally getting shut down. But he wasn't going down without a fight. To my disbelief, the build continued the next morning like nothing happened. Mark was just ignoring the city's stop order. Unbelievable. It was time to turn things up a notch. I called a lawyer friend and asked what legal options I had. She suggested taking Mark to housing court over the code violations. We discussed the case, and she agreed to help me file a lawsuit. So, for the next few weeks, I went toe-to-toe with Mark in housing court. He showed up each time in expensive suits surrounded by his legal team. But I stood resolute, armed with my evidence binder and my lawyer friend by my side. Mark tried every tactic to discredit me. He claimed the extension would increase his home value, which would benefit the whole neighborhood. He said I was just jealous and trying to control what others did to their property. I didn't take his bait, sticking to the facts and codes every time. After 3 grueling court dates, the judge finally issued his ruling. Mark was ordered to immediately cease construction and remove the completed portions of the extension. Justice at last. The judge declared Mark in clear violation of housing codes and condemned his brazen disregard for permits and approvals. I raced to my window just in time to see a dejected Mark greet the demolition crew arriving to tear down the huge wood skeleton encroaching my fence. The loud bangs and crashes were music to my ears. Piece by piece, Mark's monstrosity came down over the next few days until nothing remained but a cleared dirt lot. Mark shot me nasty glares when we crossed paths outside after that. But I didn't let it get to me. Thanks to my perseverance and patience navigating the legal system, an illegal build was stopped right in its tracks. This saga just goes to show, you should never underestimate your power as an informed citizen. I may not be wealthy or well-connected, but I still have a voice, and I'm not afraid to use it to stand up for my neighborhood against callous rule breakers like Mark. In the end, fairness and justice prevailed. The next one is a petty revenge story. For context, I dated a narcissist for almost 10 months. He cheated on me the whole time, was emotionally abusive, and an alcoholic. After I helped him move all weekend, he decided to dump me on the drive to his new place to drop off the remainder of his things and threatened to leave me on the side of a highway. All of my things were at his place and I didn't even have my car keys. We also had a business intertwined together, and I got screwed out of money as well. If you've ever been with a narcissist, there are signs that they suck from very early on. He's one of those guys that claims all of his exes are crazy, and loves to be the victim in any situation. His ex-girlfriend of a couple of years lived in my same apartment complex, and we had a lot of mutual friends in common, so naturally I reached out to her because I needed to know the truth about him to validate my experiences, and make sure I had the strength to never go back, as I knew he'd come back around. It was worse than I thought. He cheated on her for 5 years, was physically and emotionally abusive, and screwed her out of close to $20,000 when she moved out. Whenever he was on vacation, she would have women from other states reaching out to her in her DMs saying that her boyfriend slept with their roommate. She is now one of my best friends. For legal reasons, we still had to be in communication, and I wanted to make sure that I got some of the money that I was owed. I played his game well enough to get some money. After I went no contact, things were okay for a couple of months. But after his roommate's ex-girlfriend reached out to me and told me more of the awful things that he did behind my back and the awful things that he was saying about me, I decided I didn't want to keep quiet anymore. The only thing men like him care about is his reputation, so I made it my personal responsibility to ruin that. I put him on blast to a group of 50,000 women in this city, letting them know the kind of man that he is. That he is abusive, a cheater, a manipulative piece of crap, and that he's had 4 STIs in less than 6 months. I have him blocked on every platform imaginable, and he has been threatening to sue me through mutual friends for defamation for months. LOL, I had over 24 women reach out to me after that post, letting me know that they too also terrible experiences with him. Many of them dated him the same time that I did. Every time I grab coffee or drinks with one of them, they post on their IG story and tag me in it to let him know that they know everything. After he freaks out and sends them some crazy message, they block him. I've been doing this for months, so that way he knows that his reputation is still being slandered by me, simply telling the truth. After I made that post, he decided to low-key stalk me. He appeared at the place that I worked out at the exact same times I'd be there, and even showed up at the guy I was dating apartment complex the same time we were there. So I told all my friends at the gym exactly what kind of man that he is and made the environment so uncomfortable for him that he no longer goes there. One of the girls that he dated when we were together is now a regular workout partner of mine. At least he has great taste in women. Another girl that I know came up to me crying at a bar because he SA'd her. I now have an army of women to support her case to make sure that she wins. This man might have treated all of us horribly, but I have made amazing women friends in the process, and none of us have to go through what he did to us all alone. I ruined his reputation by telling the truth. Silence only protects men like him, so I decided to be as loud as possible about the kind of person that he is. The next one is a malicious compliance story, so I am a fiend for Excel spreadsheets. Absolutely love them, and even bought an extra wide monitor for home so I can see them in all their glory. My boss keeps telling me that she's an advanced Excel user. She can run macros, she can do pivot tables, she knows formulas. Not once have I seen her create or manipulate a spreadsheet in the 6 months I've worked for her. So I had a template on our Teams chat that we used every week. It was automated to within an inch of its life to tell us about the company's health. We've been using it for the last 4 months after I was given approval by the boss to make it live, gave her a tutorial and everything. This was for the admins to all see it, and I'd only need to update the raw data once a week instead of send it manually to whoever wanted it on a given day, up to 4 times a day usually. Took out about 6 hours work a week having it set up like that. Well, the boss told me to take it down because a different department who hadn't seen it was worried about personal data when one of the admins told them about it. There isn't anything like that in there, and anything that isn't open access is password hidden anyway. Our IT team has to be formally requested to add a new member to our Teams chat. The spreadsheet is password protected, the tabs are password protected, and the whole company is locked down hard anyway. So boss orders me to take it down and delete it. Run a fresh one for anyone who wants it. So I explained there wasn't anything in it that was personal or private data, but got told nope, delete it. Tried to explain we use it amongst the admins every day, and it has all these built-in features, tables, etc. Nope, delete it. So I did. The fallout? Read on cue, today boss says to me, her big boss meeting is presenting figures to the executives tomorrow. She starts quoting figures that are wildly out from the true numbers. I questioned where they came from, and she shows me a Frankenstein report that is saying the exact opposite of what she thought. Run by someone not even in our department. I tell her the accurate grand total and show her how I got there with a simple table and some screenshots I had of the original shared spreadsheet. She asks for access, and I tell her it's been deleted. I explained why and even showed the meeting notes where she had approved its use after viewing it. She denies any knowledge of it, but wants it back. I said it would take me 2-3 days to make it again due to my workload increases. I saved a copy of the template, but no way am I telling her that. This will give me breathing room to get the backlog out of my queue while she thinks I'm working on it. Let her sweat through that executive meeting knowing every figure is wrong. No one's saving her ass in this team anymore. The next one is an entitled people story. I'm a tenant and I have a bike. Here where I live, law allows you to park your bike in the building garden. To word it better, accordingly to law, it's forbidden to the building manager or whoever else to ask a bike owner to park the bike wherever else, like outside or in the building basement, for whatever reason. If, for instance, the building garden also is a car park, bikes and cars have to coexist. This is the law. Our reality, though, is a complete anarchy where those with the bigger houses or more free time to repeatedly call the building manager win, hence is legally impossible to ask me to move the bike from the garden. But in reality, if an old man with a big house will call the building manager 5 times to say, I don't like that bike, they will set it on fire. Now to my specific issue. Wherever I put my bike, the doorman calls me and asks me to move it because it is disturbing someone. The old man on the first floor doesn't want it under his window. The bar on the ground floor can't open the back door because of my bike, but my bike is not on the bar door, and also the bar owner was shocked when I told it to him. Can't put it on the left as it disturbs the cars. Can't put it on the right as it disturbs the pigeons. Can't put it on the ground as it disturbs Mother Earth, you name it. First 2 times I fell for it and moved the bike, only to find the very day after that other people were putting their bikes on the same place without the doorman saying a word. Talked with the other bike owners. Nobody ever got a word about where they placed their bikes. I wondered if it was because I'm a woman, but recently my partner is receiving the same treatment. Made some math, and we realized the only difference between us and the others is that we are renting. We're not even young people, both 30 plus, but this guy treats us as we are children who has to be disciplined and goes as far as to lie to us about other people complaining. And TT's not just about the bikes. If by chance we are the ones who have to complain for something, his reply always is to figure it out by ourselves, to the point my partner once yelled at him, "How is it even possible that you can talk to me about the complaints, but when it's me, I have to do it by myself?" And when yelled at, his attitude magically changed, of course. Anyway, in short, Doorman decided we are his least favorites. I can't actually yell at him because he manages my mail and I'm nearly sure I won't receive anything anymore forever. And also, he is the first to ask for about every question and need that is building related, so it's really not smart to start a feud with this person. I could talk with the building manager, but he works even less than the doorman, to the point everybody in the building hate him. Also, talking to him about the bikes would be useless as he sides with the old people of the building who would set fire to each and every bike. Hence, the only argument I could use is doorman lets everybody park their bike except for me. But ... IT quote S, like, hey, can you please tell the doorman to stop playing favorites? And it sounds vaguely mental. Any suggestion? The next one is an entitled people story.
I work as a bus driver. In our company, we have more than 20 nationalities from all over the world, all religions, cultures, organizations, etc. We are all friendly and professional to each other and respect each other. Now, on our branch, there is one unbreakable rule. When you see a colleague on the road, you salute each other regardless of your KMs, age, etc. Except for one guy. Let's call him Jacob. Jacob is of a usual race, nationality, religion combo. I am Caucasian European, and Jacob has assumed that I follow a specific religion that historically isn't on the best terms with his. I'm an atheist. Jacob never salutes. And by never, I mean he doesn't talk to me at all. He completely ignores my existence in any case. Garage, station, hotel, launch room, etc. I always say hi, smile, and salute on the road. On convos with others, I've expressed my curiosity if this is my impression. And they told me, "Oh, Jacob, he hates you." How can someone that doesn't know me at all hate me? The answer is it's because he thinks I'm of a certain religion. People are amazing, eh? Fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, we were both en route. On our buses, the printers for the receipts won't stop beeping the alarm when the paper roll is out, until you change it. I always have plenty of them with me. We are at the central station when I go out to stretch my legs. He's one position in front of me. Another colleague comes over for a quick hi, so does Jacob running to us. He stands right in front of me, almost face to face, when he ignores my existence completely, and asks the other driver if he has any rolls with him because he is out and goes crazy for 5 minutes. I said nothing. I had 5. He spent the next 10 minutes begging all the others on the radio to give him a printing roll, but no one could help. You hate me for no reason and ignore my existence with the most rude, passive-aggressive way possible? Enjoy 4.5 hours driving with a beep, beep, beep next to your ear. The next story is titled, Let Your Fingers Do the Hosing. This is a third-hand or worse story, and old, but it's cute, so have some dopamine. A woman found out her BF was cheating while he was away for a week on a business trip, so she packed all her things and left. When he returned a week later, he saw the phone sitting loose on the counter and picked it up, to be greeted by a voice giving the weather in Paris. Translation, thousands of dollars in charges. Let your fingers do the walking was a catchphrase for the Yellow Pages back when there were dinosaurs. The next story is titled, Karen Calls 911 After Veteran Steals Her Handicap Spot. She is not disabled. I am a disabled veteran and I'm not ashamed of it. I still like going out and socializing with people. I've got a prosthetic leg, so it doesn't bother me that every now and then I will get stared at. After all, it's mostly little kids, and I am sure they are simply curious. Like I said, most people are exceedingly kind to me, and even thank me for serving. The times that I've met someone mean were almost inexistent, except for one Karen. Although I'm still independent, my girlfriend helps me with a lot of things. She was always by my side, and I know that I could count on her no matter what. She's my best friend, and we do everything together. We frequently go grocery shopping, and while to some people that may seem like a chore or what you're supposed to do, I just really appreciated her tagging along for simple stuff. We were on our usual weekend grocery trip, and we were circling the parking lot trying to find a handicapped place to park. Most of the time, the handicapped parking spaces are taken, most of the time by people who don't have any handicap. I also have the placard and all the paperwork because, I want to do what's right and follow the rules. My girlfriend finds a spot and slowly pulls into it, looking left and right a few times. From behind, a car started honking and throwing his hands up. I can swear that I read, "What do you think you're doing?" on his lips. We didn't know what he was going crazy over, so my girlfriend pulled into the space completely. We thought maybe he was trying to park in the space across from us where the car just pulled out, but then he drove down the aisle and parked in the next row from us near the front. At this point, we just think maybe he was honking at the other car or something. I stopped thinking about him the moment he drove past us. My girlfriend insists on helping me get out of the car. I get into the wheelchair, and I see a woman approaching us angrily. She was a Karen. I could tell from the second I saw her. "Aren't you ashamed of yourselves?" Karen asked. I looked at her confused, but that was the moment I realized that she really wanted our parking spot. "What do you want, annoying creature?" I answered, laughing. "You think I'm annoying? At least I don't need someone to push me around every day," she replied, proud, fully. It hurt because she was right. I'm a tough guy. After all, you must be if you're going to serve. But I did have an insecurity about burdening my girlfriend. My girlfriend intervened, saving me from the awkward silence and situation I had just created by not responding. "What do you need, lady?" my girlfriend asked. "You can't talk to anyone like that. You don't even know us," she added. "Well, I'm going to talk however I want to someone who stole my parking spot," Karen shouted. I thought to myself, oh god, so this is where this was going. I tried thinking of something to say, but nothing came to mind. "How did we steal it from you? Were you already parked there?" she asked. I smiled as I heard her, because I absolutely loved her reply. Karen looked surprised and shocked, too. You could clearly see that she didn't expect that answer. "Well, no, but I saw it first," she replied. "Well, actually, you turned the corner after us. Besides, you don't even have a handicap placard in your window, so how were we supposed to know that you were going to park there?" I finally got the courage to talk again. "Well, I must go buy a lot of stuff right now. I don't want to have to carry it all the way down to another parking spot. Plus, that one is my favorite. I also park there," she replied. "Lady, that's not how these things work," I said. "Maybe next time do your groceries more often so you don't have a lot to carry." My girlfriend replied, smiling, "Others would like to carry out groceries through the parking lot, but they can't." So, be grateful, she added. So you really want all three of us to waste our time? Your groceries would have already been in the car if you wouldn't have done all this show, I said. I'm going to say it one last time. Go and move your car, Karen said. Don't make me become something I'm not, she added. When my girlfriend and I heard that last line, we started laughing. Why are you laughing? You think you're entitled to something just because you weren't careful and lost your leg? She asked. There was no point in listening to her anymore. She was delirious. She did not want to push her groceries to another parking spot, and yet I was the entitled one. I would kill to be able to walk down a parking lot pushing my groceries. People really do take advantage of things and don't even think twice about it. Besides that, she was wasting all this time being a selfish and entitled Karen for no reason. I would never treat someone like that, especially not a stranger. Well, we go on our way and do our grocery shopping. Karen is shopping around the store when we finish, and she was not shy about sending us dirty looks. Well, when we go out to our car and see her parked in the next aisle over, we also notice that she's parked in a handicapped spot. So I told my girlfriend to pass me my phone because I was going to report him and have her car towed from the parking lot. But before I got to call, I see the police pulling up right next to our car. Hello, sir. Someone called and told us you stole her parking spot, said the policeman. The woman told us that she wanted the parking spot because it's closer to the entrance and she doesn't want to carry her groceries, I politely said. I'm disabled, as you can see. That's why my girlfriend parked there, I added. Is the woman disabled? Asked the policeman. Yes, that woman called you, my girlfriend said, pointing to Karen. I didn't steal anyone's spot. How is that even possible? She added. I don't know. Not that we could see, and she didn't mention anything, my girlfriend replied. Out of nowhere, Karen came smiling. She explained to the policeman a situation that never happened, adding all kinds of details to the story. We told our side of the story, and the policeman talked to the manager and looked at the parking lot security cameras. He saw everything he needed, so he arrested Karen and took her down to the police station. Soon after that, the police called us and confirmed that Karen wasn't disabled, but just lazy disrespectful. The next story is titled, Entitled Ex-Husband Gets What He Deserves. After dealing with my husband, 29M, cheating on me and loudly disrespecting me for 2 years, I, 23F, finally left him 4 months ago. He assumed no responsibility for the marital bills, and I had to sell the house and his truck by myself. When I left him, there was also a $400 phone bill in both of our names. I ended up just paying the overdue bill a few months ago under the stipulation that my ex-husband gives me $200 for his share. He did give me $90, but then he laughed at me for expecting him to pay me the other $110, stating that he doesn't owe me anything. About a week ago, I went into the store of my current cell phone provider and learned that I am paying twice as much as I should be paying for phone service because I am still being charged $40 a month for my ex-husband's phone. There's still $800+ owed on it. I learned that the remaining balance was not transferred over when he switched his phone number to his own account because he failed to sign the required paperwork. I explained the situation to my ex-husband, and he was more than willing to join a conference call with me and customer service to get the remaining balance transferred to his own account. We had spent approximately 20 minutes on the phone before my ex-husband told the customer service woman that he is making payments on his own phone through his own account, that he doesn't have a clue what I'm talking about, and that whatever I have called to inquire about is clearly not even his business. Then he hung up. So today, I spoke with customer service again and learned that I technically own my ex-husband's phone since it is in my name. So I made a police report, I reported the phone as stolen, and it is now flagged and shut off. The next story is titled, A Parting Gift for Bad Neighbors. I had some bad neighbors across the street from me. Nothing too serious, just irritating. They would regularly park blocking or partially blocking driveways. Their yard was always a mess. They let their dog run around the neighborhood even though they had a fenced backyard, so everyone had doggy landmines in their yards and dog pee on their car tires. Then came the day they started moving out. Happy dance. They moved over a 2-month period where they vacated the house after about 3 weeks of moving, but kept coming back for the rest of their stuff in the following weeks. Each time they'd move something they wanted and leave a pile of stuff that they didn't want in the driveway to be hauled to the dump on a later day. I had some junk in my basement that I had been meaning to haul to the dump, so one night I took it across the street and added to their pile in the driveway. I loved watching their reaction when they found the extra junk. I figured the dump charges equated my time picking up dog bombs. The next story is titled, Keep Using My Wi-Fi to Party at 2 a.m. When I'm Trying to Sleep for Work. Enjoy the laggy music. I've recently moved out of home into a share house. One of my housemates doesn't work, and finds that 2 a.m. is the perfect time to start partying and blast really bassy music. This expressly happens on weeknights, not weekends. This happened for a few weeks on end, with each night me requesting they turn it down so I can sleep for work. I got frustrated of constantly having to wake up, get out of bed, ask them to turn it down, then spend 10 minutes discussing what an appropriate noise level is, because they thought they were being quiet. Cue petty revenge. I managed to log into my Wi-Fi settings and identify their products: phone, speaker, laptop. Whenever they start now, I either set parental controls for 2 from when they start so that their Wi-Fi works the next day and they can't locate the problem, or I just block their internet access and limit their Wi-Fi speeds. Nothing worse than trying to party and only having 1 megabytes per second download speeds, extremely slow and laggy music. One night they came home at 1:30 a.m. on the phone. When I tell you it sounded like a megaphone was being used, it was ridiculously loud. So I went in and blocked their internet access intermittently so the call would drop out, they would ring back, and as soon as they picked up, disconnect again. Sometimes I disconnect the Wi-Fi just as they begin responding on phone calls so that the other person can't hear them and has to repeat it. It's worth noting that their responses can go from 10 to 15 minutes each, and having to repeat it 3 times has caused visible frustration. They've managed to piss me off so bad that sometimes when they're home and listening to music, I block their Wi-Fi access for 20 minutes just to annoy them. The last story is titled, Playing Idiot Coworkers Game. For a little bit of context, I'm a secretary at a school, and since I get real bored, I finished all my established work for the year in the first trimester. So, on days where nothing else comes up, I just basically have to be there in case it does. You see, while I have nothing to work on, I just keep scrolling my phone and help whoever shows up. But my Karen coworker didn't like that, and decided to throw a hissy fit about it on Friday, so now my boss asked me to stop using my phone. Now, that pisses me off, because this coworker specifically sits on her chair and reads NSFW books the whole ducking day while watching small children, gross to be honest, and hides the covers so we don't see it. Well, I have a whole collection of books I've been wanting to read, and now I'm about to read all day, every day, while making it a point to sit wherever she can see me. I even plan on making a cover to put over them, exactly like the one she uses, and I'll walk into work every ducking day with it on my hands, smiling as the petty bitch I am. Next year, I'll be smarter, not bored, and she will have to find new nonsense complaints to file. Feel free to add to it, babies. I'm down to piss her off in any way.
The next one is an entitled people story.
I was looking for a second fridge, and found one on Marketplace for a price I could live with. Drove out to see it. It was clean, and the guy showed me that it worked, so I paid him and took it home. Stupid me. Just because it turns on when it's plugged in doesn't mean it works. I asked if he'd give half my money back. I figured there wasn't much chance he'd say yes, but I'm willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. Of course, he blocked me. I'm not interested in a broken fridge. So I borrowed my friend and his truck a second time, loaded the fridge up, and returned it to this dude's house at about 1 a.m. We wedged that thing right up against his front door and left. The next story is titled, Force Me to Accept to Give My Business Away to Someone Else? It'll hit you in the pocket in a way that you will never expect. Around 15 years ago, I took on a hotel. I'd seen this hotel on the street that I owned a bar be massively underused, and basically be an overflow hotel for when a local chain was full during peak summer season. It was basically empty for 46 weeks of the year, and I let my interest in it be known should it ever become available. Years later, I'd kind of forgotten that I'd even said anything to the owner, but they hadn't forgotten, and the large hotel chain pulled out from their contract, and now with only a few weeks until the summer season starting, they now had an empty property with no tenant and no income. I managed to negotiate a very good price for year one, as I'd have to throw money at the place to get it ready, and I'd still lose a few weeks of the summer with all my best efforts. And then a reasonable rent for 3 more years with a renewing clause that they assured me would be honored. Basically, if I wanted to continue, they would simply let the contract roll on. They said that as long as I was happy and the rent was being paid, that's all they cared about. They said they were happy with the rent I was paying and all seemed fine. I gutted every bedroom. New wiring, lights, power switches, bedding, curtains, all cosmetic stuff to make it nice to look at. I also repainted every room. The walls hadn't been painted in what looked like at least a decade, and some of the walls were so rotten that I had to scrape so many back and treat them before I could paint them again. I basically gave the whole place a facelift. I did it all on a small budget and called in every favor I could. I worked 20 hours a day for weeks while still operating another business, a bar, on the same street. Eventually we opened, and it was a hit. I was able to make a nice profit in year 1 and have money to reinvest and remodel the hotel even more for year 2. I installed new aircon, converted the bar downstairs into a coffee shop, and year 2 was better than year 1. It was at this point the owner decided to break the contract. He had received a much better offer from another chain hotel again. He had realized that I had taken his piece of shit falling apart hotel and made it much better, and now he wanted to cash in on all my work. His exact words were, "I'm not going to renew the contract in 2 years' time." So basically, I could accept his offer to me now. He owned a bar that wasn't working, and he wanted me to come in as his owner/partner to make it work at no cost to me if I walked away from the hotel. Or if I saw out the contract, I would be given no offer of any sort, and he said he would actively work against me for those 2 years as well. So I was basically given an offer I couldn't refuse. I was paid to leave, and received a shareholding in a bar at no cost to me. Sounds reasonable, I suppose, but I was still bitter that I was being made to take it whether I wanted to or not. I had put so much hard work into that hotel after all. I couldn't let him get away with how he went about it, could I? Cue petty revenge. This was a 30-bedroom hotel, 80 beds. I went around every single room and removed all but 3 of the 7 bed slats on every bed. The mattresses were held up and in place, but anything more than lightly sitting on the bed on the exact point of a slat, and you'd fall through the bed and onto the floor below. So the new hotel chain took over, changed the name, and basically opened my hotel as it was. As a chain, they were busy immediately. After only 3 days, they were closed again and had a delivery of 80 new bed frames. Owner was made to pay for them, as he had signed a contract to say that he was providing a hotel in perfect condition, and he had assumed that's how I'd have left it for him. I had not. To this day, he has never said a word to me about it. He just ate the bill and said nothing. But we both know that I got my revenge. Further info. He was an awful partner, and after I had made his bar work, he forced me out of there too, but with no offer of anything this time. During COVID, he went bankrupt, as all his businesses were hospitality-based and they all had to close. The next story is titled, "Make Me Smell Your Cigs and I'll Just Make Sure You Never Sleep Well." So, my apartment complex has a no smoking within like 50 feet of the building rule, and it's usually followed well. My downstairs neighbors have decided that they can bother that tiny amount and must smoke on their balcony, so anyone near them can't have a window or anything open without the smell filling their apartment. I have asked them 3 times now to not do this, or at least if they need nicotine in their place, just vape, so it doesn't smell like shit. They have decided they can't handle that, and the apartment managers can't do anything without the actual apartment smelling like smoke. So, for the revenge, I've decided that every night, starting at 9 p.m., every 30 minutes I will be going over where their bedroom is and just start jumping and slamming my feet as hard as I can into the ground, making sure they will never get a good night's sleep again while living here. I have also checked the apartment rules, and while there are quiet hours, it only pertains to things like music, TV, and parties, but doesn't matter for just movement, aka I will be doing this until these people leave. The next story is titled, "My Summertime Revenge." My last apartment was right in the middle of the complex, about 20 feet from the pool. Over this past summer, there were lots of issues with people staying at the pool literally all day, starting around breakfast time until 2 to 3 a.m. Lots of drugs, alcohol, fights, and loud music every freaking day and night. Cops were called nightly, a flurry of complaints went to complex management and their corporate overlords with the dismissive question mark as their helpful response. Those of us who lived around the pool were at our wits' end until I had a genius idea in late July. There was a party still raging at 1 a.m., so I set up my Bluetooth speaker under a bush, cranked the volume, pushed play, and I hit repeat. It was Baby Shark. It only took 1 replay to make them leave. I did it again every time a party lasted past midnight. People got the hint pretty quickly and never came back. It was glorious. The last story is titled, "Karen Slaps Disabled Veteran at Mall, Calls 911 on Him After Getting Destroyed." The story begins with me and my wife going to the mall. I don't usually go out much, but I really wanted to go to the mall and see a special exhibition. The exhibition was with vintage cars, which I loved, but first we had to go buy some things from an ailment store in the mall. For starters, let me tell you some things about me. I'm a veteran, but I'm also disabled and I have to walk around with a cane. My wife, who's been a great support for me since the beginning, always helps me get around. She is a martial arts teacher, which I find very interesting and powerful. We got to the mall and started doing our shopping as normal. Shopping was not our favorite thing to do. It was hard to move around and people were always staring. I wanted to wait for her at the exhibition for that exact reason, but I wanted to help. "Excuse me, I need help," said a female voice from behind them. "Hello," she added. I turned around and looked at the woman. She was the spitting image of what you call a Karen. Everything about her was screaming Karen. Her clothes, her hair, and also her expensive pink purse. I already knew that the conversation would be an annoying one, but I still replied. "Hello to you too. What can I help you with?" I asked, smiling. "I need help finding something in the store, of course," she replied. "I'm not an employee here, lady. I can't help you," I replied. "You think you're funny or something?" "I want to speak to your manager," she shouted. "I don't know who the manager of this place is. What is your problem?" I asked. "You cannot talk like this to your clients. Your client is your boss, and I demand respect," she said. "That might be true, but the only thing is that I don't work here," I said again. "As I said, I want to speak to your manager," she shouted. "Ma'am, I also want to speak to the one owning the psychiatric hospital you ran out of," I said, already angry. She took a few steps closer to me and slapped me as hard as she could. Then she started kicking my cane and laughing. "You know that I know this cane is fake, right?" she asked, laughing. "Disabled people don't walk around malls," she added. Karen got closer to me and started laughing harder, and because of how angry I was, I gave her a leg sweep and she fell to the ground. She quickly got up and she was ready to scream. But then she noticed that her purse got dirty with something from the floor. She started screaming louder. "I can't believe this! First you assaulted me, and then you dirty my purse," she started screaming. "This purse is more expensive than everything you've ever seen in your life," she added, pretending she was crying. "You harassed and assaulted me first," I shouted. "I told you that I don't work here, but you insisted," I added. "That's not true. You sexually assaulted me, and pushing you was self-defense," she said, and then looked at her purse. "This purse is more expensive than your house and your car altogether, old man," she added. "And you think that's something to be proud of?" I asked. "Spending so much money on a purse?" I added. Karen started hitting me with her purse, but my wife intervened. "That's enough. I'm calling the police," said my wife. "I thought that you'd stop, but I see that you're not going to," she added. Karen goes closer to her and starts hitting her with her purse. She pushes my wife as hard as she can, but my wife reacts. As I told you in the beginning of this story, my wife is a martial arts teacher. She started doing all kinds of tricks on Karen. I must say, I know that we shouldn't reply with violence to violence, but I'm very proud of my wife for kicking Karen's ass. Karen fell to the ground again, crying and shouting. She then takes out her phone and calls the police, stating that I sexually assaulted her and my wife beat her. Meanwhile, the manager came. Some employee who saw the scene called him. "What happened here?" asked the manager. "I assume you are the manager. So, let me tell you what happened. This employee of yours sexually, physically, and mentally assaulted me. And the other one, the woman, beat me," Karen shouted. "First of all, this man is not my employee," said the manager. The manager was confused, looking at us and then at Karen. The story Karen told was hard to believe. My wife and I told our side of the story and how things really went. Meanwhile, the police showed up at the scene and started asking questions. "Police officer, these three right here tried to assault me," shouted Karen. "At first it was just these two, but the manager joined them. They assaulted me right here, and I only acted in self-defense," she said. "We'll check the security cameras and see exactly what happened," said the police officer. "There's no need for that. I already told you what happened." "They assaulted me. You have to arrest them," added Karen. "They're both employed here, and the manager is covering for them," she added. "Unfortunately, lady, we can't take anyone's words as truth. We have to do our job, and if they're guilty, we'll arrest them," replied the policeman. The police checked the security cameras and they saw and heard everything that really happened. Fortunately for me and my wife, the quality of the store's security cameras was amazing, and you could also hear the conversation really well. The police knew what they were dealing with, so they went to arrest Karen. The police officer came from behind and put the handcuffs on her. She started screaming and kicking. "You are under arrest for assault, false declaration," said the policeman. "How is this possible? He insulted and assaulted me, the woman beat me, and they even dirtied my purse," she shouted. She continued screaming and shouting, moving aggressively, trying to escape the policeman holding her. Karen managed to break out of the policeman's arms, and she started running towards the exit. She was laughing and showing us the middle finger, but two policemen started running after her and caught her right away. "Stupid move, lady," the policeman said, smiling. "You just made things worse for yourself," he added. She started swearing, threatening my wife and I. We both just stared at her, not saying anything, just waiting for her to be taken away. Karen was arrested and directly taken to jail. The manager apologized to us thousands of times, offered us a discount of 60%, and gave us his personal phone number. He offered us a meal as an apology, and we talked about this and that. After that, we all went to the exhibition, and the manager paid for both our tickets, which was amazing because they were very expensive. In the end, we ended up with a fun story to tell, a discount at the mall, free entry at the exhibition, and a new friend.
The next one is an entitled people story.
Last year, my partner of many years, who I was ready to propose to and marry, and one of our good friends started getting far closer than I was really comfortable with during a period I was working long and hard to provide for us. She started getting distant, and they were cozying up. Eventually, they tried to guilt me into accepting a polyamorous relationship, which I wasn't cool with, and when I ultimately put my foot down on the idea, she ended up choosing them over me. My ex tried to turn the entire friend group against me, which didn't work, but did scar me mentally. And I found out a lot of other terrible things she had been doing, like using my money for parties or spending it on her now current partner/ex-friend. She consistently trashed me on social media when I never talked bad about her, even after all the hurt and pain I went through. I went through a massive depressive episode that I'm still struggling with today, losing my business, sanity, and even my human will to live. It was the darkest time of my life for this and some other reasons, but I kept reminding myself that I have to outlive my enemies. And a life well lived is the best revenge one can have. So I set the plan in motion. There is a very famous DJ my ex had a huge tattoo for and absolutely loves more than anything, besides Molly, probably. And her new partner is a massive fan as well. I believe they even traveled to go see said artist recently. Travel was our big thing I got her into. And while I had this plan for a while, I kicked into overdrive and finally got it done after finding that out. I worked many years as a videographer/photographer in the touring music world. It was the dream that I eventually gave up being at home for, and focused on building our relationship more as I got older. During my career, I worked with some decently known artists, and built a few important connections. I opened up my old contacts list and went down the rabbit hole until I was able to get in contact with the DJ's team, and get set up to be paid handsomely for doing tour work, running fan meetups, managing their Instagram content, etc. My work and name will be promoted all over their socials for my ex and her partner to see. And you best believe I'll be taking plenty of selfies. And while my original motivation was pure spite, I am super excited to be following my dreams again and getting another opportunity to be a creative. Plus, meeting so many amazing new people on the road again. The next story is titled, After Insulting My Team and Myself, You Want Me to Help Tie Your Pool to the Car? In college, I used to work part-time at a popular retail chain in Canada. Let's call it Canadian Fire. One very, very hot summer Saturday, we had a run-on pool. Everyone and their brother wanted something they could fill with water to sit in, and the rush started at 8 a.m. As you can imagine, the hard plastic cheap pools were flying off the shelves, starting with the first customer through the door. Like any college kid, I was hungover from the night before and just trying to make it through the day. My girlfriend at the time was a cashier, and she suggested we get a kiddie pool to sit in when we got off work later that night. So I snagged one of the last pools and was dragging it to the back to keep until my lunch when I could buy it. A customer, let's call him Hugh Jass, saw me grabbing the last pool and demanded I bring it back so that he can purchase it. I told him no, I was setting it aside for myself, and there were plenty of those pools in a box he was more than welcome to purchase. Well, Hugh went bananas, started swearing, cussing, and yelling for a manager. Finally, the manager on duty heard the noise, came over, and very begrudgingly told me the customer was entitled to the pool because I hadn't purchased it yet. I get it, and up until this point I was mad, mostly because I couldn't chill with my girl in her bikini, drinking beer in the pool. But in this case, the customer was right. And then it happened. The customer looked at me, smiled a Cheshire Cat smile, and said, "The customer is always right, which is why you work here and I don't." I saw red, but with my manager there, I couldn't say much. Hugh then looked me dead in the eye and said, "I bet you want to help me carry this out to my car and tie it to my roof." So I stifle my anger and carry Hugh's pool out to his car. Here comes the petty revenge. I asked Hugh to please get in the car and put all the windows down so that I can safely tie the pool to his roof. I take some of that really strong twine you use for packing and proceed to wrap the pool with twine through the windows, all four, and secure the pool to the roof. As I tied the last knot, real knots, nothing easy to undo, Hugh looks at me and says, "Don't feel badly, I always win," as he drives off. I wish I was there when Hugh Jass got home and tried to open his car doors, only to find I tied all four of them shut. Not sure how his very large frame was ever able to get out of the car, but every time I see a car with something tied to its roof, I wonder if someone else just got their petty revenge. The next story is titled, HOA towed my classic car and chopped down my trees. I got the HOA disbanded. I want to start off by saying I am not the kind of person that usually gets aggressive or even upset. When the HOA pushed me to the point I was determined to get them disbanded, you can imagine that they finally crossed a big line. I was raised in a world where I had to work hard or I wasn't going to get anywhere in my life. My family didn't have a ton of money, but from them I got a strong sense of moral values and knowledge of hard work. Through high school, I found myself mowing lawns in order to afford to send in college applications. The hard work paid off when I graduated from law school and knew I could enjoy my life in a way I never could as a child. I got a home in a nice neighborhood, and I didn't know much about what an HOA was in my personal life. I loved my property, and it had some of my favorite looking trees in the world, dogwoods, that would bloom beautifully in the spring. Besides a house, I wanted to buy myself something really special that I had always wanted. An old classic car that I would see in car shows and dream about sitting inside of one day. I got it. And while it needed a little bit of work and love, I was happier than I had ever been before in my life. Leave it to the HOA to jump in and start raining on my parade. It wasn't even anything major at first, just small problems that they wanted to complain about. They told me that I had to take care of my weeds and that my mailbox needs to be closed at all times. They even told me that my door couldn't be painted red, which made no sense since I had a black door. Also, they complained the paint job on my house was cracking and insisting that I pay to get it redone so that the neighborhood looks nice. It wasn't a cheap thing to do, and gave me a bad taste in my mouth. The letters never stopped about these small petty things, but I didn't want to start a fight. I complied the best I could and hoped that they would just back off. The next letter I got was one telling me two things. I'll just talk about them one at a time so there isn't any kind of confusion. The first thing was that the dogwood trees had to go because they didn't look good. It wasn't spring, so they weren't in bloom and pretty anymore. I was upset about this, but decided that over the weekend I would find somebody to come and take the trees out. The HOA sent a group the next morning to start ripping out my trees, and I was angry with the nerve they had to do this to me. They had been walking all over me, and I had had it from them. Backing up a little bit, the other thing in the letter was telling me I couldn't park my classic car in the driveway because they said it looked like a piece of junk and was bothering everybody. Between the disrespect and sending people to take down my trees, I was fully angry. I was going to get my revenge, and while the type of law I studied had nothing to do with HOAs, I went and looked up as much as I could. Getting rid of an HOA wasn't the easiest thing in the world, and unless it happened internally, the only sure way that I found was if the majority of the neighborhood voted for them to disband. I had set up my plan and was getting the ball rolling by putting on a nice suit and going around the neighborhood to talk to people. I wanted to find out, first of all, if anybody else was getting harassed by the HOA, or if it was only me. I was happy by the sheer amount of people that didn't slam the door in my face and instead talked to me. I heard some horror stories similar to mine and that most people were fed up with them. I asked if they could get rid of the HOA, would they? And most said they would love to not live in an HOA. They didn't know the laws, and I told them before inviting them to come to the next meeting where I would be initiating a vote. I did make one fatal flaw, and that was not putting my classic car into a place with a lock for safekeeping. While I was out rallying against the HOA, they had towed my car illegally off of my property. I was lucky enough that one call to the towing company and I was able to get my car back before anything had happened, and store it in my garage away from the HOA. My plan was in place to take them down, and the day of the next HOA meeting, so many people came that they had to change the venue location. Usually, very few people show up to these meetings, and in a neighborhood of only about 50 homes, everybody showing up meant it was a little crazy. The meeting went, I guess, like a normal one, until it was asked if anybody had new business to bring up. I stood right up and said that I wanted to put the HOA being disbanded to a vote. The board members actually laughed in my face and told me to sit down. I pulled out my folder and stated the law right to them, giving them no choice but to allow for the vote. It was long and each household had to be accounted for. Those that didn't show up to vote basically gave the HOA a vote to stay how it was. At the end, though, 35 of 50 properties decided that we would be better off without an HOA existing. They wanted to argue again that the only thing we could do was actually elect a new president if we disagreed with the HOA. They wanted to play that kind of game with me, and it was okay because I had studied for every single curveball they might have thrown my way. They knew they were wrong, but fighting it would take time and money. Instead, I said that I was running for president, and since I got more votes than the current one, I was elected in. Then, as my first and only act as HOA president, I shut down the HOA from the inside. At that point, nobody could actually stop it. Being raised to work hard taught me to also think outside the box, which is what ended up taking them down in the end. For an HOA to start over in our neighborhood, they would need to go through an entire process and get 50% approval rating again. I don't think that's going to happen for a while. In the meantime, I can finally enjoy my house and car without being harassed about everything. Plus, if I really wanted to, I could put on my resume that I was president of the HOA, and just not mention how long that actually lasted. They tried to abuse their power and instead ended up losing everything to a man that they had just pushed over the edge. I even repainted my door red just so I can laugh in their faces about now getting to do anything I wanted with my house. The next story is titled, If You Don't Like It Here, Find a Job and Move Out. 2.5 years back, I, 20 at the time, non-binary, was still living with my parents. I'm a full-time bachelor's student. I started university right after high school at the age of 18. My mother and I got into a fight. I don't remember for what exactly. In the heat of the fight, she said, if you don't like it here, find a job and move out. Enter here, malicious compliance. Within a month, I found a job and moved out with my significant other, 19 at the time, non-binary. Ever since, my mother has been demanding for me to come over at my parents' place once a week, every week. Today, I live with now my fiancé, our cat, and my service dog in the same place we moved out originally those years ago. My mother has become more careful with her words towards me. The last story is titled, You Talk Trash Behind My Back, You Fail Your Exams. First of all, English is not my first language, so please be gentle with me. When I was 17, I was the typical outsider in class. Most of my school days in high school, I was bullied and/or alone. Therefore, my self-esteem and confidence were at an all-time low. The only thing I was confident in was my ability to learn. After my high school days, I wanted to change, and so I went to a business school. I wanted a clear start, at a place where nobody would know me and my past. There, I met Mary, 17W. She was the exact opposite of me, and out of all people in class, she talked to me. Excited was an understatement for the feelings I had at that time. I thought that would be the typical story of an extrovert that picked up the introvert. Boy, was I wrong. Our little friend group got bigger when Celine, 17W, from our class, and Christine, 17W, from my Spanish classes joined us a little later. Midterms came, and it doesn't look good for Mary. She almost fails most of them. So we made a little study group with Mary, Christine, and me. Celine worked most of the time for a burger place after school, and had good grades, so she passed. Mary slowly but surely got better grades, and we all had a good time. Mary also visited me at my parents' place, and all things were good. 6 months before our final exam, I got sick for 3 days, and Celine and Mary were alone in school. When I was in school again, Mary got sick, and Celine told me that Mary told her that she only befriended me because I was smart and some other things about my home and family. After that, I was devastated. But I made my mind up for my revenge plan. Mary told me that she met her new boyfriend at a party, therefore she doesn't have much time for our study group left. Every time when she has time, however, I was unavailable, so she and Christine studied alone. Christine was okay without me. She had much better grades than Mary. Mary's grades dropped fast. Final exams come and go, and Mary fails all her exams. When she got her grades, she looked me in the eyes, and I smiled. She knew what I did, and she leaves furious. The good thing was that I learned how to be confident and talk more to people. Also, I met my best friend Marina only half a year later. We have our 13th anniversary together this year.
The next one is an entitled people story.
Today, my GM got the pettiest revenge on some rude-ass bar guest. And it was so satisfying. A group of guys sat at the bar and ordered some burgers. One guy neglected to tell the other bartender that he wanted to add bacon and pulled pork on his sandwich. The bartender asked if he wanted the stuff on the side or a new burger, and he said a new burger, but still wanted to eat the one he had. No problem. He explained he would have to pay for both burgers and said, it's fine. When it comes time to pay, the bartender cashed out his tab with the card on file with his permission, and when he got the bill, he was mad that he was charged for 2 burgers. The other bartender explained that he had to pay for both because that's what he asked for, and that his other burger was being boxed in the window. He made a scene about it, saying he didn't want the new burger now and wanted a refund. Our bar manager deleted the payment and gave him his new check with the 1 burger that he ate. He paid in cash for the new check, but left like $5 short of his total. Unlucky for them, our GM saw the entire thing go down. The guy who didn't pay his tab all the way walked out before the other 2 guys that were sitting. They also happened to be wearing their work shirts for a lawn care sodding business with a phone number on it. The other bartender said he didn't mind paying the $5, but my manager said duck that and called the dude's boss. Told him that he behaved very rudely and shortened his tab, to which the guy's boss replied, "That mother ducker." Within 5 minutes, the guy came back in with the $5 he shorted. Long story short, if you're going to short your tab, don't do it in your uniform with your boss's phone number on the back. The next story is titled, "Sorry, Dude. It's only been me here, and trash is all I've seen." Not long ago, I was working at a marina, and it was a great job. I drove around a beautiful beach with my pooch on a golf cart, keeping an eye on things. When the shutdown happened, we stayed open, and as one of the only outdoor places to be open, we were packed. The vibe changed, and trash was much more common. People emptying their trash from their car in the lot before leaving, and got mad that I refused to open the gate until they took care of it. I had a lady call the cops and report me for kidnapping. The cop that showed up yelled at her more than I had. I'm at the beach one beautiful afternoon and noticed a family walking away from their picnic table. I realized they're going to the parking lot to leave, but had trashed their area. I'm talking pooped in diapers on the table. They couldn't even be bothered to roll up. I was triggered to the max, thinking how to approach the situation. That's when amongst the table of trash I see an important-looking large set of keys. It was time to take a break. I was happily strolling to the beach shore, my favorite place to collect my thoughts. Random thoughts like how good my arm is after all these years. Good enough, I'm sure. I then went to go finish cleaning the most trashed area I had seen. As expected, some guy looking guilty and panicked walked up to me. "Have you seen any keys around here by chance?" I looked at him and told him I don't think so, but feel free to check the bin, as I added a diaper to the top poo side down. He quickly came to terms that he wasn't getting them back, but he watched me continue to clean his mess to be sure. I would look at him smiling, as we both knew I was in too good of a mood for the task at hand. He couldn't even be mad, knowing he'd have them had he cleaned up after himself. Probably knew he'd have done the same. I wanted him to accuse me so I could troll him more, but he was smart enough. They were in the parking lot for hours waiting around. I enjoyed every time I checked to see that they hadn't left yet. The next story is titled, "Neighbors Use My Property as a Camping Ground and Burn Down My Field." Don't mess with a farmer. I have farmland that I am proud of and manage all by myself. I work long and hard hours, so I don't have a ton of patience for people that want to mess with me. One part of my land next to my fields isn't used much, and instead it's just grass and a ton of trees. It doesn't always look like it, but it is part of my farm, and I don't let people really go onto it. Some people have asked for use or even to rent out that spot, but since it's close to fields and livestock, I tell them that they can't. I've had a few instances of people genuinely not knowing and ended up on that part of my land. I don't get mad at them, I just explain that it is part of my farm and please get off it. One guy told me that I should put up a sign so people realize that the farm started and they should turn around. I thought that was smart, so I built a sign thinking that it would eliminate the problem. It lessened it, but I overestimated the population's ability to stop and read a sign instead of just ignoring it. My next solution was just to build a fence and put a sign on that, so it made it clear as day to everybody that my property was off limits. I did have one group of neighbors that I had spoken to many times about this, and for them, I really had lost any patience. They knew very well that it was my land and they couldn't be on it. I kicked them off at least 3 times in the past, as they always wanted to use that area for parties and things like that. I just wasn't comfortable and figured that with the fence, it would be another problem solved. Instead, the group came onto my land again, and this time I noticed they had brought tents and sleeping bags. It was late and I wanted to go to bed, but I wasn't going to ignore the fact that a group was using my land for camping and had started a bonfire. At first, I saw only the fire and went worried something was serious until I saw who it was and knew it was the same idiots. I kept telling them to stay off my land. Me. I told you last time that you can't party out here. Back up and leave. Neighbor. Oh, come on, it's just an empty area of land. Anybody should be allowed to use it, and just because you put a sign and fence saying it's yours doesn't make it true. Me. The area is part of my farm, and I'm telling you one last time to get out of here before I call the cops on you. Do you realize how dangerous a bonfire here is? You have 10 minutes to put it out and pack up, or I'm going to make sure you leave in a police car. Neighbor, go back to your little farmhouse and leave us alone. If the cops come, I'm going to tell them how your signs are fake. I went back to the house and contemplated calling the cops or not. Something else made the decision for me as I saw the fire. It had spread over to one of my fields, and they had no control over it. I called the police and the fire department, who came over and put out the fire before it could do any more damage. I told the police how the group had started the fire, and I told them to get off my property, but they wouldn't listen. I wanted them all arrested for trespassing and destruction of property. My neighbors didn't take that well, and were trying to say that it wasn't my land, but the police weren't having it. Even accidentally setting my field on fire was enough for them to all get arrested that night. I was just lucky that the fire didn't spread any further to my barn. My animals were woken by the commotion and clearly upset and stressed about everything. I slept with them in the barn that night and waited until the police contacted me about what we were going to do with my neighbors. In the meantime, I had to assess the area they destroyed and to see what kind of damage had truly been done. The first thing was they cut a hole in my wire fence to get into my land in the first place. Something I hadn't even thought about the night before. Then I went to my field and saw that the entire crop was destroyed by the fire. Even the ground was ashen and probably wouldn't be usable for a while because it had to heal. The fire destroys the nutrients in the soil itself, which is a huge problem. I was going to be out about $150,000. Now I might be a farmer, but I'm not stupid and know that they are liable for the damages that they caused. I took them to court, and they didn't seem intimidated because they had a big fancy lawyer. What they didn't know was not everybody in my family was a farmer, and in fact my cousin was a big lawyer himself. First, I found out they were trying to sue me back for their damaged property since their tents and sleeping bags were also burned in the fire. I couldn't believe it. They really thought they could try shifting the blame onto me. Their story was basically the area I was claiming as farm was a public camping property, and I had harassed them to leave. Then I started a fire to burn them out and almost killed them. Once again, I have no patience for people like these neighbors and wanted to teach them that messing with a farmer is a bad idea. I presented the court with a land assessment proving it was my property, my fence, and the sign warning people to stay off it. It was my property, as well as camera footage that they were the ones camping on my land. One tried to interrupt, saying they had my permission, but the judge shut them up and let my side continue. We had the police report that showed they got taken away for trespassing, and the fire department report that showed the fire was spread from a bonfire right by their tents. Then I showed my assessment of damages, and when I dropped the price tag, that was when the neighbors started to get nervous. They started to complain that a farm plot wasn't worth that much, and I was making up figures. I had an expert come out and assess it through on my end, while they didn't even have any farming knowledge of what a crop is worth or how soil damage even works. Between the three neighbors, They were going to have to pay me the full amount. Now, that was in civil court, but I think the state was also pressing charges because they don't like people starting fires and wanted to try and make an example out of them. They didn't end up going to jail, but did pay me the money they owed me. I got a new fence and sign warning people that this was my land, and if they trespass, police would be called. It might sound harsh to people who don't know why, but I really don't care. All that matters is my land stays safe, and those neighbors stay far away from me and the farm. They are just lucky none of my animals got hurt because I would have made sure they ended up in jail if that happened. The money will help me repair the land and keep myself afloat until the new crop is ready for planting. Never mess with a farmer, though, because most of us do not want to be messed with. And if you want to start a fight, we can promise to end it. TLDR. Neighbors camp on an area of my property that I have repeatedly marked as mine and even put up a fence. They refuse to leave, and when I go to call the police, I see their bonfire has spread out of control. Police and fire department arrived to put out the fire, and I see that it's destroyed one of my crop fields. They are removed from my property, and I sue them for field damages that amount to $150,000. They think in court they can turn it around on me, but I destroyed them, and they must pay me the money. I build a new fence and make it clear that if people come to my land, I'm going to call the cops on them. The next story is titled, Beware the Quiet Man. This happened some years ago at my old workplace. TL, team lead, pettiness supreme. Sup, TL's nightmare boss. Manager, Sup's boss. Director, everyone's boss. TL was a very smart and patient man, so for him to do what he did, he must have been on his absolute last duck to give. Sup dumped a lot of her work on him, while she took all the credit for said work in their weekly meetings with department heads. However, when something did go wrong, it was all his fault. She made sure not a single person ever dared to think she could possibly be the one to blame. Spectacularly backfired, she once again threw TL under the bus. Beware the quiet man. TL patiently waited until Sup left for a 2-week vacation that she had planned and saved for a year. That Monday, her first day of vacation, he went into work, boxed up his things, and told the manager he was done. Manager scrambled to try to get him to stay because he was just that good at his job. Both the manager and the director were dependent on him for a lot of reports and analysis. Plus, with Sup away, they would be responsible for the tedious day-to-day ops tasks as well. TL said nope and walked out. A day of missed work on his and Sup's parts would snowball like crazy, so the director called Sup and told her she needed to cut her vacation short. She couldn't come back right away, so when she did, about a couple of days later, not only did she lose out on the money she had already paid for her vacation, but she also had to pull overtime to catch up. Icing on the cake, she was salaried. The last story is titled, Be an All-Around Mean Girl in High School. I'll run your performance. When I was in high school over 10 years ago, there was a girl, now titled Mean Girl in my grade, that just made it her hobby to bully other kids. The typical make fun at anyone's interest that aren't mine kind of bullying. Ironic, given how she got into some of the same hobbies she made fun of after class graduated. Anyway, at my high school, we had a talent show theme performance towards the end of the year, around November, December. The entire show would have an overarching theme being performed by students, and between those theme performances were other students doing their own talent stuff. Mean Girl got in as her own performer. I wanted to participate, so I joined the backstage crew helping with lights and sound. Now, this wasn't with any malintent at first. Honestly, it was fun learning what certain buttons were for in the lighting sound control room. As a non-senior at the time, I couldn't be alone in the control room, but I provided support to the senior who coordinated what buttons to press in time with the sound team, who had their own buttons across the room. After day 2 and 3 of the 4-day show, watching the same performances and coordinating button pushes, the senior I was supporting had to take a day off to take care of some family issues, so I had to man the lighting buttons myself. The sound control senior kept reiterating how important it was to make sure our button presses were in sync, and they were, till the next performance came up. It was Mean Girl and her two friends about to do their song and dance. At the spur of the moment, I ducked up the synchronization between light and sound so bad, the three girls honestly lost their desire to continue the performance mid-song. Shortly after the whole show ended, the teacher in charge got me on freaking out about the duck-up, but honestly, it was amusing. I suffered no consequences, so that was a nice cherry on top of the embarrassment that Mean Girl felt after the show. Duck her, IMAO. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again